The world outside fell silent. Doors were bolted, and we retreated into the fragile sanctity of our chosen confines. Lockdown, a time of isolation, of introspection, and for some, a period where the true horrors lurking within those four walls, or perhaps within ourselves, began to stir. Welcome, fellow isolates, to Nightmare True Horror. You sought safety from the unseen enemy without, but what happens when the terror is already locked in with you? Tonight, we pry open the diaries of dread from 7 souls who found that lockdown was not a shield, but a crucible. 7 true stories where the silence was shattered by far more than loneliness. What unsettling truths did the quiet of your own lockdown reveal? Did the shadows in your periphery grow longer, more defined? Share your lockdown anxieties, the whispers you couldn't quite place, in the comments below. Let us know we weren't alone in our unease. And if you find a grim camaraderie in these tales of confinement and creeping dread, ensure you are subscribed. For Nightmare True Horror continues to unearth the unsettling truths that lie hidden beneath the surface of our forced solitude. Brace yourselves. The following accounts are disturbingly real. And remember, as the stories unfold, listen for the echoes of your own experience, but be warned. The most terrifying revelations often surface when you believe you are safest, locked away until the very end. The quarantine has begun. The first night I checked into Riverbend Inn, it was empty, silent, and deeply unsettling. I didn't mind. Cheap rates and solitude were precisely what I sought, especially after leaving New York City to escape a painful breakup and the suffocating chaos of urban life. Nestled near an abandoned stretch of Vermont highway, the inn had a rustic charm. Worn wooden beams, faded floral wallpaper, and the faint smell of mold and pine cleaner. I settled into room 7 at the far end of the hall, unpacking my laptop and instant coffee packets. Isolation suited my job as a freelance editor perfectly. My life felt transient, temporary, reduced to suitcases and anonymous inns. Everything seemed normal until the third night. At exactly 2:13 a.m., a distinct creaking woke me, a sound like heavy footsteps pacing above. I blinked into the darkness, my heart thumping loudly in my ears. Above me, the pacing continued rhythmically, heavy and deliberate. But Riverbend Inn had no second floor. The next morning, feeling groggy and unnerved, I approached Marla, the innkeeper, who was meticulously polishing silverware. "Hey, is there attic storage or something upstairs?" I asked. Her polishing slowed. "Nothing up there. Just the roof." Her voice held a slight tremor. She wouldn't meet my gaze. Night 4. Sleep eluded me entirely. Anxiety twisted inside my chest. I stared at the digital clock as it flashed to 2:13 a.m. Like clockwork, the heavy footsteps began again. Thud, thud. This time, I noticed a faint dripping sound, rhythmic and unsettling, coming from the ceiling. In the faint glow from my phone, I saw a thin, spider-webbing crack, slowly stretching above me. I quietly slipped out into the corridor. Fluorescent lights flickered faintly. Room 5's door swung open, creaking ominously. My flashlight caught a small scrap of paper, smeared with blood, protruding from beneath the door. Trembling, I knelt to pick it up. It was blank except for an indistinct bloody thumbprint. "What are you doing?" Marla's voice startled me, and I spun around sharply. "There's something in room 5, I whispered urgently. She glanced at the paper dismissively. "Just your imagination. Lockdown loneliness playing tricks. You should rest." I returned to my room, but sleep didn't come. The 5th night brought dread. Each ticking second heightened the tension until at 2:13 a.m., something crashed overhead. A violent thud that shook the room. Dust rained from the widening crack, gritty on my skin. The footsteps resumed, now quicker, more agitated. Terrified yet compelled, I stepped outside, phone flashlight trembling in my hand. The hallway stretched endlessly, shadows dancing grotesquely. Approaching room 5 again, my breath caught. Blood pooled from beneath the door. Panic surged. I rushed to Marla's quarters downstairs, pounding desperately. She emerged, eyes wide, but strangely calm. "There's blood upstairs, room 5. Someone's hurt," I stammered. Her expression shifted subtly, eyes narrowing. "You shouldn't be wandering around at night." Reluctantly, She followed. Upstairs. We found room 5 spotless. No blood, no trace of anything. Even the bloody paper was gone. You imagined it, she insisted calmly, her tone persuasive, almost gentle. It's stress. These old buildings creak and groan. Days blurred into nights. Sleep became impossible. The footsteps intensified. Soon whispers joined them, hushed murmurs through the walls, indecipherable yet sinister. Occasionally I heard faint dripping sounds, always near that expanding crack in my ceiling. By night 7, desperation overtook fear. Armed with a crowbar from the maintenance closet, I sought answers. At precisely 2:13 a.m., footsteps hammered above me, louder, frantic. I traced the noise to a narrow service closet. The wooden ceiling panel was loose, edges splintered. Heart racing, I climbed up, crowbar heavy in my grip. I emerged into a cramped crawl space filled with thick cobwebs, shadows flickering wildly from my phone's light. A suffocating stench overwhelmed me, metallic, rancid. There, sprawled grotesquely, was a decomposing body dressed in staff attire. His eyes were wide open, clouded yet hauntingly staring. Beside him lay scattered guest belongings, wallets, jewelry, photos. Horrified realization dawned. Behind me, the trapdoor slammed shut. Marla's voice, cold and composed, seeped through the cracks. You shouldn't have found this. Who is he? My voice cracked. The previous caretaker. Too curious like you. I hammered frantically on the panel, splinters slicing my knuckles raw. Lockdown made things easy, Marla murmured softly. No questions, no searches. Just valuables for the taking. Desperation surged. With a final furious shove, the panel shattered, sending me crashing back into the corridor. Marla lunged at me, a knife gleaming. We collided violently, sprawling into a desperate, chaotic chase through the hallway, shadows twisting grotesquely around us. With adrenaline-driven strength, I swung the crowbar, connecting sharply. She fell, stunned, knife clattering away. Gasping, I called emergency services. Blue lights flooded the inn. A young officer, who had eyed Marla suspiciously for weeks, discovered damning evidence in the crawlspace. I survived, barely, but trauma lingered. Each night since, at exactly 2:13 a.m., phantom footsteps haunted my sleep. Echoes I knew rationally, but chilling reminders nonetheless. I'm writing this from my car in a Walmart parking lot, using the free Wi-Fi. My phone's at 23% battery. If I don't finish in time, I may never get to tell anyone what happened at 1472 Oakwood Drive. It started in March 2020, when the world was panic buying toilet paper, and I was panicking about rent. I'd been laid off from my serving job when restaurants closed, and my savings wouldn't cover April. My roommate had fled to her parents' place in Vermont, leaving me with twice the rent and zero income. Craigslist saved me, or so I thought. The listing read, room in spacious Victorian, $400 month, utilities included, 3 housemates, quiet professionals, available immediately. The price was suspiciously low for Boston, but desperation makes you ignore red flags. I called the number, spoke with a woman named Elise, who explained they'd had a sudden vacancy. She sounded normal, pleasant even. We arranged a socially distanced viewing that afternoon. The house stood apart from its neighbors, set back from the street behind a metal gate. Victorian, as advertised, with peeling green paint and windows that resembled sunken eyes. Elise met me on the porch, tall, mid-30s, her mask preventing me from seeing much beyond tired eyes, and dark hair pulled into a severe bun. The others are working, she explained, unlocking the front door. I'm a graphic designer, so I've been remote for years. Connor works in finance, and Micah does something with computers. Inside, the house had that peculiar scent of old wood and lingering cooking smells. The tour was brief. Shared kitchen and living room downstairs, 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms upstairs. My room would be at the end of the hall, previously occupied by someone Elise referred to only as Jay. He left abruptly, she said when I asked. Job relocation. Lucky timing for you. The room was larger than expected, with a bay window overlooking the backyard. Some furnishings remained. Bed frame, dresser, desk, which Elise said I could use or replace. There was an odd rectangular discoloration on the hardwood, where a rug had clearly protected the floor from sunlight. "Do you have any questions?" Elise asked, standing in the doorway, never fully entering the room. I had many. About house rules, the other roommates, why Jay had left his furniture. But the rent was so low and my bank account so empty that I simply asked when I could move in. Tomorrow? Her response came too quickly. We'd prefer to fill the vacancy as soon as possible. I signed the rental agreement that evening. No security deposit, no credit check. Another red flag I willfully ignored. Moving took only one carload. Elisa was nowhere to be seen when I arrived, but she'd left a key under the mat with a note. "Welcome home, Sadie. House meeting tonight at 8. The first few hours felt normal. I arranged my meager belongings, wiped down surfaces with disinfectant wipes, and examined the oddly shaped stain on the floor. It was roughly 5 feet by 3 feet, rug-shaped, with distinctive water damage around the edges. I needed a rug anyway. My small IKEA, one from the previous apartment, would cover part of it. As I dragged it into position, the corner caught on something. A small nail protruding from the floorboard. When I pulled it free, the board shifted slightly. Curious. I pressed down. The board moved. Loose. With minimal effort, I pried it up using a butter knife from the kitchen. Beneath was a small space between the floor joists. And there, in the darkness, lay a folded piece of fabric. I fished it out. A dishcloth, once white, now stained a rusty brown. Blood. Unmistakably dried blood. My heart pounded as I unfolded it, revealing more stains inside. Handprints, smears. Someone had tried to clean something up with this cloth. Something substantial enough to soak through to the floorboards beneath. The front door slammed downstairs. I quickly replaced the board, kicked my rug over it, and stuffed the cloth into my backpack. Footsteps ascended the stairs. "Hello?" a male voice called. "New roomie?" Connor appeared in my doorway. Early 30s. Athletic build. The kind of conventional handsomeness that belongs in banking. He wore a mask, but pulled it down to reveal a perfect smile. "Welcome to the madhouse. How's the room?" "Great," I lied, "just getting settled." His eyes drifted to the rug, then back to my face. "Awesome. Good call bringing a rug. This old place gets drafty." He lingered a moment too long before adding, "See you at the house meeting." I met Micah next. Younger than the others. Maybe my age, 26, with nervous eyes and a prominent Adam's apple that bobbed when he spoke. He knocked softly, as if afraid to disturb me. "Just wanted to say hi," he mumbled through his mask. "Let me know if you need anything. Wi-Fi passwords on the fridge." By 8 o'clock, we gathered in the living room, spaced apart in what Elise called quarantine formation. They'd prepared a welcome basket. Hand sanitizer, masks, disinfectant wipes, and a bottle of wine. "House rules are simple," Elise explained. "Clean up after yourself, quiet hours after 10 p.m. and during lockdown. No outside guests, period. We take the virus seriously," Connor added. "We sanitize common areas daily and minimize outside exposure. I go to the office twice weekly. Otherwise, we're all remote." "What happened to the previous tenant?" I asked, attempting nonchalance. "Yay, was it?" 3 pairs of eyes fixed on me. "Job transfer," Elise said quickly. "To Seattle," Connor added. "Very sudden," said Micah. Looking at his feet, the conversation moved on. But something had shifted in the room. A tension, palpable and strange. As we dispersed, I heard Connor whisper to Elise, "You didn't tell her about the deposit, did you?" That night, I researched bloodstain removal techniques on my laptop. Large bloodstains seep into floorboards, requiring deep cleaning or replacement. Someone had cleaned my floor thoroughly enough to remove visible traces, but not thoroughly enough to prevent seepage. Sleep came in fitful bursts. Every creak of the old house jolted me awake. Around 3 a.m., whispers filtered through the heating vent, connecting my room to the one next door. Elise's. Should have waited longer. "Wasn't our fault he tried to leave." New girl seems observant. Then Connor's voice clearer. "We stick to the story." Days passed in uncomfortable normalcy. We shared awkward meals, exchanged pandemic news, and avoided personal topics. I observed my roommates carefully. Elise cleaned obsessively, wiping surfaces multiple times daily. Connor spent hours in the basement, which remained locked unless he was down there. Micah watched me when he thought I wasn't looking, his expression a mixture of fear and guilt. All three began locking their bedroom doors at night. I heard the distinctive clicks after 10 p.m. 1 week in, I found the courage to search the house while everyone was supposedly working. Elise's room yielded nothing unusual. Connor's door was locked. Micah's room contained stacks of computer equipment and programming books, but a quick search of his closet revealed a shoebox containing newspaper clippings about missing persons cases in Boston. Most were from 2019, but one from February 2020, just before lockdown, showed a young man named Jason Ellis, 27, last seen leaving his workplace in Copley Square. The article mentioned he'd recently found new housing but hadn't disclosed the address to friends. Jason, the previous tenant. That night at dinner, I casually mentioned my interest in true crime podcasts. Oh? Elise's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Which ones? I just finished one about disappearances, I said, watching their reactions. It's fascinating how people can just vanish. Connor's jaw tightened. Micah stared at his plate. People don't just vanish, Elise said coldly. There's always an explanation. Like Job transfers to Seattle. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. The silence that followed was deafening. Connor set down his fork deliberately. What exactly are you implying, Sadie? Nothing, I backpedaled. Just making conversation. That night, the whispers through the vent were louder, more urgent. I pressed my ear against it, catching fragments. Found something. Too nosy. Like Jason. Needs to be dealt with. I barely slept. The next morning, I called my old roommate in Vermont, explaining my suspicions in hushed tones from inside my closet. She thought I was overreacting, but agreed to call the police if she didn't hear from me in 24 hours. That afternoon, I noticed my room had been searched. Nothing obvious, just small things out of place. My laptop moved slightly. My backpack unzipped. The blood-stained cloth still hidden in my pillowcase remained undiscovered. At dinner, Micah avoided eye contact completely. Connor watched me with calculated interest, asking pointed questions about my family. Do they know where you're living now? And friends, who have you been in touch with since moving in? No. After dinner, I locked myself in my room and pushed the dresser against the door. Around midnight, footsteps approached. The doorknob turned slowly, testing my lock. Then a soft knock. Sadie, it was Micah. Can we talk? It's late, I called, heart racing. Please, it's important. About Jason. I moved the dresser just enough to open the door a crack. Chain lock still engaged. Micah stood alone, pale and shaking. You need to leave, he whispered. Tonight, I can help you. Tell me what happened to Jason first. His Adam's apple bobbed frantically. He found out. About the others. Connor and Elise. They're not what they seem. They find people. Vulnerable people. People without strong connections. And a floorboard creaked behind him. Micah's eyes widened. Everything okay? Connor's voice, falsely casual. He appeared behind Micah, hand resting on the younger man's shoulder with uncomfortable familiarity. Midnight confessions. Just checking if Sadie needed anything, Micah stammered. So considerate, Connor smiled, but his eyes remained cold. Lady, apologies for the intrusion. Sleep well. He guided Micah away, hand never leaving his shoulder. I didn't sleep. Instead, I packed a small bag and researched Jason Ellis on my phone. His social media accounts have been active after his disappearance. Posts about a new job in Seattle. Sporadic updates that slowly dwindled. The most recent was from 2 weeks ago. Loving my new life. Hash fresh start clearly written by someone else. At dawn, I heard the basement door open and close. Peering through my partially open door, I watched Connor emerge, carrying a large plastic top bundle to the garage. Minutes later, his car started. This was my chance. I crept downstairs, searching for Micah. The house was eerily silent. Elise's door remained closed, no sound from within. Micah's room was empty, bed made, as if he'd never come home last night. A series of thumps emanated from the basement. The door was unlocked. Every instinct screamed to run, but I needed proof. I descended slowly, phone flashlight illuminating the way. The basement was larger than expected, with several rooms. One contained only a chair with restraints, a plastic-covered floor, and various tools hanging on the wall. Another held filing cabinets. The thumping came from behind a third door, locked. The filing cabinets contained folders, dozens of them, each labeled with a name and date. I recognized Jason Ellis, February 2020. The most recent, Micah Lennox, April 2020. Inside were identity documents, photographs, and detailed plans for maintaining online presence after acquisition. They weren't killing their roommates. They were stealing their identities. The thumping grew more insistent. I approached the locked door, whispering, "Micah." The sound stopped immediately. Then a muffled voice, "Run. Now." The basement door slammed above me. Footsteps descended the stairs. Curiosity killed the cat, Sadie. Elise's voice, sing-song and terrifying. "And you are a very curious cat." I backed away, gripping my phone. "The police are coming." A bluff. Elise reached the bottom step, smiling coldly. "No, they're not. Your phone has no signal down here." "No, they're not. Your phone has no signal down here." House feature, specially installed. She was right. No bars. Connor's disposing of Micah's inconvenient crisis of conscience. She continued conversationally. "He's always been our weak link. Too empathetic. You, however, would make an excellent addition to our operation. Smart, observant, few connections. Perfect candidate for repurposing. People will look for me." I insisted. "Will they? Your roommate fled to Vermont. You lost your job. There's a pandemic. People are expected to drop out of sight." She took a step forward. "We've done this 8 times, Sadie. We're very good at it." I lunged for the stairs, but she was faster, blocking my path. What happened next was instinct. I threw the phone at her face and grabbed a screwdriver from the workbench, brandishing it like a knife. "Let me go, and I won't tell anyone." I gasped. Elise laughed. "You found bloodstains under the carpet." Jason wasn't as cooperative as we'd hoped. We circled each other slowly, Elise between me and the stairs. The locked door rattled behind me. "Micah, trying to help. The pandemic was a gift." Elise continued. "People isolating, minimal social contact. Unemployment skyrocketing. Perfect hunting conditions for people like us." A noise upstairs. The front door opening. Connor returning. "Down here," Elise called. "Our curious cat found the cream." In desperation, I threw the contents of a nearby shelf at her and ran. Not up the stairs, but deeper into the basement, toward a small window I'd spotted earlier. I could hear Connor thundering down the stairs as I wrenched the window open and squeezed through, scraping my sides raw on the metal frame. I ran 6 blocks before finding a convenience store, where the clerk took one look at my bloody clothes and called 911. The police found empty bedrooms and a spotless basement. The filing cabinets, gone. The locked room, empty. Even the blood-stained floorboard in my bedroom had been replaced. Connor and Elise had vanished, taking all evidence with them, including Micah. The investigation stalled quickly. Without evidence, my story sounded like pandemic-induced paranoia. The police found records of Jason Ellis indeed moving to Seattle. His social media remained active. Micah Lennox apparently never existed. No records, no social security number, nothing linking him to the house. The house itself was owned by a shell company registered in Delaware. The rent I'd paid went to a now empty account. 2 weeks later, I received a friend request from Jason Ellis with a message. "You should have stayed, Sadie. We could have given you a fresh start, too. Wonder who'll be living in your skin next." #quarantine crew. I deleted all my social media and moved across the country. But sometimes, when scrolling through local missing persons reports, I see faces I recognize. Young, alone, struggling, and wonder if they answered a too-good-to-be-true Craigslist ad during lockdown. If you're reading this and considering a cheap room in a shared house, remember, the real cost might be more than you're willing to pay. And if you ever find yourself at 1472 Oakwood Drive, run. Don't look back. They're still out there hunting. Still selecting their next identities. Still waiting for the perfect tenant. The city felt like a held breath during that first lockdown. I signed up to volunteer for Senior Safe Check, mostly to combat my own climbing the walls boredom and do some good. My route covered a quiet, leafy part of town, the kind where everyone usually knew everyone else's business. Usually. The list they gave me was mostly names, addresses, and a checkbox for OK needs follow-up. Most calls were quick. Grateful folks happy for a chat from a safe distance. Then I got to 121 Oakwood Lane. The notes listed 4 names: Arthur Peterson, Eleanor Peterson, Carol Albright, and David Albright. Probably a married couple and Eleanor's sister with her husband, I figured. Common enough. A thin, elderly man with surprisingly sharp blue eyes answered the door. Mr. Arthur Peterson. He wore a neatly pressed shirt, though his hands trembled slightly as he gripped the doorframe. "Just me here," he said, his voice raspy. Before I could even get my full spiel out, the others, they moved. Just before all this unpleasantness, he gestured vaguely at the empty street. 4 people, all at once, right before a pandemic shut the world down. The little alarm bell, tinny and distant, pinged in my head. I made a note. The next week, as I was doing my rounds, a grocery delivery van pulled up to 121 Oakwood, just as I was approaching. 2 young guys started unloading bags. A lot of bags. Multiple brands of cereal, different types of tea, a pack of adult diapers. Definitely not a one-man shopping list. Mr. Peterson hurried out. Still sending the full order," he mumbled, not quite meeting my eyes as he herded the bags inside. "Hard to get these services to change things quickly, you know." The screen door clicked shut a little too fast. The air around the house felt still, too still. My 3rd visit, I brought a small care package, some hand sanitizer, a puzzle book. Mr. Peterson seemed more agitated. His smile was a brief, tight stretch of his lips. While we were talking, 6 feet apart on his porch, I noticed the basement door just visible down the side of the house, tucked under the eaves. It was old wood, like the rest of the house, but a brand new, gleaming brass padlock secured it. It looked jarringly out of place. As I was leaving, I heard it, a faint, dry cough, quickly muffled, from somewhere near that side of the house. My skin prickled. "Old pipes," Mr. Peterson called after me, his voice a shade too loud. This old house is always making noises. That cough echoed in my thoughts. The image of that shiny padlock. I started taking my daily walk past Oakwood Lane, even on days I wasn't scheduled to check in. The downstairs windows were always dark, curtains drawn tight. One afternoon, I thought I saw a flicker of movement behind a grimy basement window at the back, a sliver not quite covered by what looked like cardboard, taped from the inside. My heart hammered. Was I imagining it? The following week, another delivery. This time, a pharmacy courier. I saw the name on the bag as the driver handed it to Mr. Peterson. Eleanor Peterson. His face went pale. "Another mix-up," he stammered, snatching the bag. "They just can't get it right." He practically slammed the door. The smell of bleach, sharp and chemical, wafted out as it closed. It was stronger this time, almost aggressive. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I called my volunteer supervisor, voiced my concerns. The 4 names, the single occupant, the deliveries, the cough, the padlock. She was sympathetic but dismissive. "Sarah, people are under a lot of stress. He's probably just a bit confused or eccentric. Let's not jump to conclusions." But I had jumped. I was already falling. A few days later, I went by Oakwood Lane outside of my scheduled visit. I told myself I was just being thorough. The street was dead quiet. As I approached number 121, I saw the front door was slightly ajar, a dark slice in the sunny afternoon. A cold dread sharp as broken glass twisted in my gut. "Mr. Peterson?" I called out, my voice barely a whisper. Silence. Only the buzzing of a lone fly near the porch light. I pushed the door open. The smell of bleach was overwhelming, stinging my nostrils. The house was unnervingly silent. "Mr. Peterson?" I called again, louder this time. My voice cracked. I stepped inside. The living room was tiny, almost sterile. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light piercing through the drawn curtains. My gaze was drawn to the hallway leading to the back of the house, towards where I knew the internal basement door was. And then I heard it, not a cough this time, a rhythmic thump, 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 faint, weak, but undeniable, coming from below. My breath hitched. On the small table by the stairs, a set of keys. One of them was small, brass, and shiny. My hand, slick with sweat, reached for them. The police were on their way. I'd called them in a shaking voice from the porch, whispering my fears. But the thumping, it was getting weaker. I couldn't wait. The key slid into the padlock on the basement door with a soft click. I pulled the heavy, groaning door open. A wave of putrid air, stale, sick, and something metallic, like old blood, washed over me, making me gag. Dark, narrow steps descended into blackness. The thumping had stopped. A wheezing sound, like air struggling through a pinched straw, drifted up. I fumbled for my phone, thumbing the flashlight on. The beam cut through the oppressive dark. It landed on a pair of eyes, wide, terrified, reflecting the light like a cornered animal. Then, further back in the gloom, another pair, and another. Sunken faces, matted hair, bodies skeletal thin on makeshift beds. Not Mr. Peterson. These were the others. Eleanor, Carol, David. Alive. Barely. The wail of sirens grew closer, finally shattering the street's suffocating silence. The police found Arthur Peterson in his upstairs bedroom, an empty pill bottle beside him. He hadn't been able to face what he'd done, or perhaps what was about to be undone. The official story pieced itself together, a descent into a twisted form of caregiving. He couldn't cope with their mounting illnesses, their dependence. He'd convinced himself he was protecting them from the virus, from the world outside, that he could no longer manage for them. So he'd locked them away, his love curdling into a monstrous control, their pensions and his still arriving like clockwork, funding their prison. Eleanor's cough had been real, a desperate signal. I walk those quiet suburban streets now, and the silence feels different. It's not peaceful anymore. It's a blanket heavy and suffocating, potentially hiding anything. Every locked door, every drawn curtain, every distant, unexpected sound makes the hairs on my arms stand up. The ordinary, I learned, is the most terrifying mask of all. The bass throbbed through my apartment wall like a sick heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. I pressed my ear to the plaster, phone recording. Rachel's lockdown parties were legendary. J-sets, body shots, TikTok live streams. But tonight, the laughter curdled into shrieks. Stop, stop. A girl's voice. Rachel's glass shattered. The music died. By dawn, 17B was hollow. No red Solo cups, no smeared lipstick on the mirror. Just a single deflated balloon wedged behind the fridge. The cops found nothing. Probably snuck out to Cabo. Officer Greeley yawned. Rich kids? The first invitation arrived that afternoon. You're cordially invited. Glossy cardstock, blood red font. Address, 224 Elmwood Drive. A boarded up Victorian 3 towns over. My name, Isla Chen, embossed in gold. I burned it. The next one came inside my grocery delivery, 405 Mercy Lane. This time, a Polaroid slipped out. Rachel's boyfriend, Troy, gagged with Christmas lights, dated yesterday. Mercy Lane's porch sagged under my weight. Inside, dust motes swirled in my flashlight beam. A disco ball hung from the foyer. Static-filled speakers humming. Celebration by Cool and the Gang. Upstairs, a mattress stained like Rorschach ink. A phone charger. No Troy? The bathroom mirror screamed in lipstick. Who's next? My reflection flickered. Something moved behind me. Greeley wouldn't look at the Polaroid. Troy's in Bailey. Instagrammed beach pics this morning. He was right. There was Troy, golden and shirtless. But the timestamp matched the second he supposedly sent me a DM. Come to 815 Cherry St. Bring vodka. The geotag placed him at Cherry Street. A meth lab raised in 2018. 815's floorboards moaned underfoot. A phone glowed on the kitchen counter. Troy's Instagram live. Comments scrolled. Fake. Do a shot. The basement door creaked open. Cold air carried the tang of copper. 27 phones lined the shelves, all streaming different parties. Rachel's laugh looped on an iPhone 12. Troy's bally backdrop was green-screened. A corkboard mapped the invitations. My face stared back, circled. The garage door roared. Tires crunched gravel. I hid under the stairs as footsteps descended. A man in a hazmat suit, gloves dripping bleach. Found you, he sang, peeling off the mask. Really. They called us essential while clubbing, he said. Serenium clear liquid into a vodka bottle. Spread the virus. Killed my mom. Now I RSVP for them. Elund. They're calling me a conspiracy nut. The videos I posted, deepfakes, the hazmat suit in my trunk. Stolen. But tonight, another invitation arrived. Your new address. My witness protection cabin's coordinates. Greeley's voice echoes through the trees on a Bluetooth speaker. Biop. The phones are still live. Commenters beg me to dance. I can't tell if they're real. I can't tell if I am. The guest list preys on pandemic-era alienation, where virtual validation masks real-world rot. The true horrors in the parties. It's realizing how easily we'll click like on a lie, as long as it's trending. Refresh the feed. Your invite's loading? Refresh the feed. The Florida sun was doing its usual February blaze, making the palm trees outside my English classroom window look deceptively peaceful. Inside, we were dissecting frost. The irony of good fences make good neighbors lost on teenagers more interested in the clock. It was 2019, a Tuesday. Ordinary. Then the intercom crackled, a sound that always made my stomach clench, even before the words. Code red. This is a code red. Initiate lockdown procedures. This is not a drill. The practiced calm I projected was a thin veneer over a jolt of pure, cold adrenaline. Okay, team, I said, my voice a little too bright. You know the drill. Lights out, away from the door, silence. Students, bless their resilient hearts, moved with a practiced efficiency that was itself unsettling. Backpacks became pillows under desks. The blinds clattered down, plunging us into a dim, stuffy twilight. My own hands trembled as I locked the heavy classroom door, the deadbolt sounding like a cannon shot in the sudden quiet. Silence, the kind that presses in, amplifying every creak of the old building, every shallow breath. We were a huddled mass of 30 souls in the dark, waiting. The distant wail of sirens began, a mournful soundtrack to our fear. 10 minutes crawled by. 15. Kids were scared. I could see the whites of their eyes, but they were quiet, disciplined. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Not the frantic pounding of someone running. Not the heavy tread of police boots. These were slow, measured, deliberate, coming down our hallway. My blood turned to ice. We were on the second floor, at the end of a wing. There was no reason for anyone to be walking so calmly unless they were the reason for the code red. I pressed my eye to the tiny, reinforced window in the door, my breath fogging the cool glass. Nothing but the empty, dim corridor. But the footsteps continued, soft scuffs on the linoleum. Closer. My phone, tucked in my back pocket, and switched to silent, vibrated. A nervous tick, I thought. Then it buzzed again. My heart hammered against my ribs. Who would be texting now? With shaking fingers, I pulled it out, shielding the screen's glow with my body. An unknown number. The message was 4 words. I see you, Miss Evans. A gasp lodged in my throat. My eyes darted around the darkened room. Every student was under a desk. Faces pale. Some silently crying. No one was looking at a phone. No one could see me clearly enough to know I was even holding my phone. The footsteps outside paused right by our door. A faint shadow flickered under the thin gap at the bottom. How? The question screamed in my mind. How could anyone see me? How did they know my name with an unknown number? Was this a sick prank from a student who'd somehow kept their phone? But the timing, the footsteps, it felt too coordinated, too predatory. Another buzz. Are you scared? Bile rose in my throat. This wasn't random. This was personal. The air in the room felt thick, unbreathable. I could hear a girl near me, Maria, starting to hyperventilate, a tiny, hitched whimpering sound. I wanted to scream, to yell for help, but the presence outside the door held us hostage in a new, more intimate way. The shooter was a nebulous threat. This felt like a scalpel pressed to my skin. A soft, almost delicate scratching sound came from the door, like a fingernail being dragged slowly across the metal. Sharap, one of the boys, a usually boisterous kid named Jamal, let out a choked sob. I put a finger to my lips, my eyes wide, trying to convey a calm I didn't feel. The doorknob, a heavy industrial silver, began to turn. Slowly, excruciatingly, my mind raced. Barricade? Yell. The lockdown protocol was clear. Stay silent, stay hidden. But the protocol hadn't accounted for this. The knob stopped, then rattled, as if testing the lock. The footsteps receded, just as slowly as they'd approached. Then more sirens, closer this time. And the sounds of running, shouts, official voices. The tension in the room didn't break. It just shifted, holding its breath for a new terror or a release. It was another hour before the all clear came. An officer, face grim, unlocked our door. The official story emerged later. A former student, troubled, armed. He'd been apprehended on the other side of the campus. No one from our wing had been physically harmed. But the texts, I showed them to the police. The unknown number was a burner, untraceable. They logged it, but in the chaos of the larger event, it was a footnote, a bizarre detail. No one could explain how someone knew I was Miss Evans in that specific room, at that specific moment, seemingly observing me. The days that followed were a blur of counselors and concerned parents. I scanned my students' faces, searching for a flicker of something. Guilt, triumph, anything, nothing. Was it one of them? A student with a grudge, or someone else entirely? Someone who had slipped through the cracks of that chaotic day, using the terror as a playground. The villain of that lockdown. The shooter was caught, but my villain, the one who whispered to me in the dark, remained a ghost. The motive? Perhaps it was simply the cruel pleasure of power, of turning the screw on someone already terrified. A test of control in a situation defined by its lack. I still teach, but the silence of a quiet classroom is different now. It's not empty, it's listening. Every unexpected footstep in the hall, every unknown number on my phone, brings back that cold dread, the feeling of unseen eyes. The red code ended, but the whisper lingers. Some horrors don't need a monster you can see. They just need a voice in the dark, reminding you that you're exposed and utterly terrifyingly alone. I dropped my bag and locked the door behind me, sliding the deadbolt with a satisfying thunk. The cabin was small, one bedroom, a cramped kitchen, and a living room with a single window facing the dense forest. I'd always liked the isolation as a kid, the way the trees swallowed the world. Now, it felt like the world was swallowing me. The first night, I lay in the bedroom, the mattress sagging under my weight. The wind howled outside, rattling the window pane. I thought I heard footsteps on the porch, soft, deliberate crunches in the gravel. I sat up, heart thumping, and peered through the curtains. Nothing but shadows swaying in the moonlight. I checked the locks again before crawling back to bed, chalking it up to nerves. Morning brought a gray drizzle. I unpacked my laptop to work remotely. Data entry, mind-numbing but steady, and found a Polaroid camera on the kitchen counter. It wasn't mine. Dad's, maybe. The film cartridge was half full, the plastic casing scratched. I set it aside, figuring I'd mess with it later. Work kept me busy, but the cabin's quiet gnawed at me. Every creak of the walls felt like a whisper. That night, I woke to a faint clicky, sharp, mechanical, like a camera shutter. My eyes snapped open. The room was dark, the air heavy. I held my breath, listening. Nothing. Just the wind again. I rolled over and my hand brushed something smooth under the pillow. I pulled it out. A Polaroid. My stomach twisted as I squinted at it in the dark. It was me, sleeping in this bed, my face pale and slack. The date stamped on the bottom read yesterday. I bolted upright, fumbling for the lamp. The light flooded the room, revealing nothing but my duffel bag and a crooked dresser. I checked the locks. Still secure. No scratches. No signs of tampering. My pulse hammered in my throat. I tore the bedroom apart, looking for anything out of place. Nothing. Just that photo, its edges curling slightly, the image grainy but unmistakable. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I called my friend Nate, a park ranger who lived an hour away. "You sure it's not some prank?" he asked, his voice crackling through the spotty reception. "Maybe your dad left some weird shit behind." "He's been gone for years," I said, gripping the phone. "And this was taken just today." Nate promised to swing by after his shift. I spent the day pacing, checking windows, and clutching a kitchen knife. The Polaroid sat on the table, taunting me. I noticed something new. A faint shadow in the corner of the image, humanoid, blurred. My skin crawled. When Nate arrived, he searched the cabin and the surrounding woods. No footprints, no tire tracks, he said, scratching his beard. You're out here alone, Jess. Maybe it's stress. Lockdown's got everyone jumpy. I showed him the photo. His face tightened, but he shook his head. Creepy as hell. But it could be old. Someone messing with you. He left me with a can of pepper spray and a promise to check in tomorrow. That night, I triple-checked the locks and wedged a chair under the doorknob. I slept with the knife under my pillow. The Polaroid camera now locked in a drawer. Around 2 a.m., I woke to a faint e-scrape, like nails on wood, coming from the living room. My mouth went dry. While I gripped the knife and crept to the door, peering through the crack. The living room was empty, the chair still in place. But the window, it was cracked open. Just an inch. I froze. I checked that window. I knew I had. My breath hitched as I heard it again. A slow, deliberate use grab. It was coming from under the couch. I backed away, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the wind. I locked myself in the bedroom, barricading the door with the dresser, and sat on the bed, knife in hand, until sunrise. When I finally emerged, the window was shut, the chair untouched. But under my pillow was another Polaroid. Me? Sleeping. Knife clutched to my chest. The date, last night. In the background, the dresser was still against the door, exactly as I'd left it. I called Nate, hysterical. He came with his buddy, Carla, a deputy sheriff. They tore the cabin apart. Floorboards, walls, even the crawl space. Nothing. No hidden cameras. No secret entrances. Carla's eyes lingered on the Polaroids. This is some stalker shit, she said. You need to leave, Jess. Now, but I couldn't. My car was in the shop, and the nearest town was a 2-hour hike. Nate offered his couch, but I'd have to wait until his next day off. One more night, he said. Keep your phone charged. Call me if anything happens. That evening, I sat in the living room, every light blazing, the knife in my lap. The Polaroid camera was still locked away, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The wind died down, leaving an oppressive silence. Then a yay thudding from the bedroom. I jumped, gripping the knife. Another why thudding, louder, like something heavy hitting the floor. I crept toward the bedroom, my shadow stretching across the wall. The door was ajar. I pushed it open and my breath caught. The dresser was overturned, drawers spilled across the floor. In the center of the bed sat a stack of Polaroids, dozens of them. Me sleeping, eating, working at my laptop. Dates stretching back to the day I arrived. And one at the top showed me standing in the living room, knife in hand, taken minutes ago. I screamed, stumbling back. The front door rattled, the deadbolt clicking open. I ran to it, slamming it shut and locking it again. But the handle kept turning, slow and deliberate. I backed away, dialing Nate. But the call wouldn't connect. The lights flickered, then died, plunging the cabin into darkness. A voice whispered from the bedroom, low and raspy. Jesse, my name drawn out like a hiss. I gripped the knife, tears streaming down my face. The floorboards creaked, closer now. I bolted for the kitchen, grabbing the pepper spray, and hid in the pantry, heart hammering. Silence. Then, a faint click. A Polaroid slid under the pantry door, showing me crouched in the dark, my face pale and terrified. The date, now! I stifled a sob as the door handle rattled. The next morning, Nate found the cabin empty. My phone, the knife, and the Polaroids were gone. The locks were intact, the windows sealed. Carla filed a missing persons report. But the case went cold. Locals whispered about the cabin, about my dad. A quiet man who'd kept to himself, who'd once been a photographer. They found his old studio in town, boarded up, with a locked room no one could open. A year later, a hiker found a single Polaroid in the woods, half buried in the dirt. It showed me, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream, the cabin's walls behind me. The date was the night I disappeared. Underneath, in shaky handwriting, was one word, Until was like a The security office was a glass box dropped into the center of the Westlake Corporate Plaza's grand lobby. A fishbowl where I spent my nights monitoring an empty building. The overnight shift at a half-vacant office complex wasn't exactly thrilling, but the pay was decent, and the solitude suited me. 3 months in, I'd established a comfortable routine. Rounds at 11, 1, and 3. Coffee at midnight and 4 a.m. An endless podcast to fill the silence. That night started like any other. October rain drummed against the glass ceiling of the lobby, casting rippling shadows across the marble floor. I just settled in with my thermos when the alarm panel lit up with a shrill beep. Fire exit 4B. I silenced the alarm with a tap and checked the security monitors. Nothing unusual appeared on the feed covering that area. Just the long, empty hallway on the 4th floor of building. Probably just a glitch. The system was temperamental, especially during storms. 15 minutes later, it happened again. Same exit, same empty hallway on the monitor. The third time, I grabbed my flashlight and radio. Control, this is Mason. Checking alarm at exit 4B. No response, but that wasn't unusual. The overnight dispatcher was notorious for taking unauthorized breaks. The service elevator hummed as it carried me to the 4th floor. When the door slid open, the darkness of the hallway seemed to press against the threshold. My flashlight beam cut through it, illuminating the gray carpet and white walls. The motion-activated lights should have switched on, but they remained dark. Maintenance issue, I muttered to myself, voice uncomfortably loud in the silence. I walked slowly down the hall, shoes squeaking against the carpet. The beam of my flashlight bounced from wall to wall, creating distorted shadows that seemed to move alongside me. The alarm panel beside fire exit 4B glowed red in the darkness. As I approached, the alarm suddenly stopped. I frowned, testing the door. It was secure. Back at my station, I logged the incident and made a note to have maintenance check the system in the morning. Just as I finished, the alarm sounded again. This continued for 2 hours, the alarm triggering, stopping when I approached, and restarting once I returned to my post. After the 6th trip, frustration overtook my professional demeanor. What the hell is wrong with this system? I growled, slapping my hand against the alarm panel. That's when I noticed something odd. The digital log on the panel showed an entry code had been used at 1:17 a.m. 17 minutes ago. My stomach tightened. Nobody should have an entry code for that door. According to the building plans, fire exit 4B led nowhere. The East Wing expansion had been canceled 5 years ago due to funding issues, leaving that door opening onto a 4-story drop. I radioed control again. No answer. The security office computer contained records of all authorized entry codes. I pulled up the database and searched for activity at exit 4B. Entry code, 1981. JHD issue 2. Jarrett, Henry D. Status. Deactivated, 2018. Henry Jarrett had been the night security guard before me. I had never met him, but his name occasionally came up in conversation. Apparently, he'd quit suddenly, leaving without notice after a decade of employment. I pulled up his file. The photo showed a thin-faced man with deep-set eyes and a tight smile that didn't reach them. Employment ended October 17, 2018. Almost exactly 5 years ago. The alarm triggered again. I ignored it, scrolling through Jarrett's employment history. That's when I found the incident report, filed by the day shift supervisor. 10/18/2018. Guard not at post for morning handover. Office undisturbed. The security footage shows Jarrett conducting normal rounds until 3:17 a.m. when he responded to alarm at exit 4B. No footage of his return. Radio and keys recovered at exit 4B. Missing person report filed with local PD. My throat went dry. I clicked through to the police report. Case closed 12/4/2018. No signs of foul play. Subject believed to have left voluntarily. But he hadn't returned his uniform or collected his final paycheck. His car had been found in the parking garage. His apartment contained all his belongings. The case notes mentioned a history of mental health issues and a recent prescription for antipsychotics. The alarm sounded again, longer this time, insistent. I pulled up the building schematics. The original plans showed that exit 4B had been designed to connect to a bridge leading to the east wing, but that wing was never built. Instead, the door opened onto empty air, a sheer drop to the concrete below. But if that was true, how had Jarrett exited through it? I decided to check the security footage from that night 5 years ago. The archived videos were stored on an old backup server. rarely accessed. It took me 20 minutes to locate the right date. The footage showed Jarrett at his desk, just as I was now. The alarm triggered. He walked to the elevator, rode to the 4th floor, and approached exit 4B. The camera angle showed him from behind as he reached the door. He stood there for a long moment, then the door opened. It should have triggered the emergency alarm, the one that couldn't be silenced without a manager's code. But the footage showed no alarm. The door simply opened, and Jarrett stood frozen in the doorway. Then he stepped forward and disappeared. The alarm at my desk triggered again. I jumped, spilling coffee across my keyboard. I needed to see what was behind that door. The elevator seemed to take longer this time, the fluorescent light flickering as it ascended. When it opened on the 4th floor, the hallway was still dark, but something felt different. The air was heavier, charged with an electric tension that made the hair on my arms stand up. As I walked down the corridor, my flashlight beam seemed weaker, struggling against the darkness. The alarm stopped just as I approached the door. I studied the panel. It showed the same entry code had been used again just 3 minutes ago. Taking a deep breath, I tried the handle. Locked. I shined my light around the frame, examining it closely. That's when I saw the inconsistency, a thin line running along the wall next to the door. Barely visible unless you were looking for it. I pressed against it, and a small panel popped open, revealing an old keypad. Different from our system. Older. I hesitated, then entered the code from the log. 1981 JHD. A quiet click, and the panel slid aside, revealing a narrow passageway. Not a drop to the concrete below, but a maintenance tunnel, dusty with disuse. My radio crackled, making me jump. Through the static, I heard a voice. "Mason, you there?" The overnight dispatcher, finally at his post. "Yeah," I replied, voice shaky. "I'm at exit 4B. There's some kind of hidden passage here." "What?" "That exit's sealed. Has been for years." "Well, it's open now. I'm going to check it out." "Negative. Wait for backup." "Negative. Wait for backup." But curiosity overpowered caution. I stepped into the passage, flashlight leading the way. The tunnel was narrow, concrete walls damp with condensation. It sloped downward, turning at sharp angles. After about 50 feet, it opened into a small room. My flashlight beam revealed a desk, a chair, and walls covered with papers. As I moved closer, I saw they were security logs, printouts of email exchanges, and photographs. Hundreds of photographs of the building, of employees coming and going. In the center of the desk lay an open notebook. The handwriting was cramped, frantic. They don't know what's happening in the sublevels, but I've seen them. The executives after hours. The freight elevator going down past the parking levels. There aren't supposed to be sublevels. Nothing in the plans, but I followed them. I know what they're hiding. The last entry was dated October 17th, 2018. They know I know. Tonight's the night. I've rigged the emergency exit. If anything happens to me, the information is there. My radio crackled again. "Mason, building security shows you've opened a sealed area. You need to evacuate immediately." "Why?" I asked, scanning the room. "What's down here?" "What's down here? That area is structurally unsound. It was sealed for safety reasons, but I wasn't listening anymore. My flashlight had landed on a section of wall behind the desk. Unlike the concrete walls of the tunnel, this was newer drywall, hastily installed, and there was a small hole, just big enough to see through. I peered into the darkness beyond. My radio erupted with static. Through it, I heard the dispatcher's voice. Urgent now. "Mason, get out now. Security is on the way. Security is on the way." I pressed my eye to the hole. For a moment, I saw nothing but darkness. Then my vision adjusted. A vast space stretched beyond the wall, dropping away into shadows. Catwalks and platforms descended into the gloom, and there were people down there, moving among strange equipment. In the center of it all was a structure that seemed to pulse with a faint blue light. Something moved closer to the wall on the other side. A face appeared at the hole, eye meeting mine. I recognized those deep-set eyes from the personnel file. Henry Jarrett hadn't disappeared. He was on the other side of the wall. His lips moved. I couldn't hear him, but I could read the words. "Run!" The alarm on my radio changed tone. The evacuation signal. The building's PAS system crackled to life. "Attention. This is an emergency evacuation. All personnel must exit the building immediately." I backed away from the wall, heart hammering in my chest. As I turned to leave, my flashlight beam caught something I'd missed. A small camera in the corner of the room, its red light blinking steadily. They knew I was here. I ran, stumbling through the tunnel, back to the fire exit. The hallway beyond was no longer dark. Emergency lights strobed, painting the walls with rhythmic flashes of red. The evacuation alarm wailed. The elevator was locked down during evacuations. I had to take the stairs. As I pushed through the stairwell door, I heard footsteps below, moving quickly upward. I froze, caught between going up to the roof or down to the lobby. The footsteps were coming from below, at least 2 people moving fast. I chose up. The roof access door was supposed to be locked, but it opened easily under my push. The October rain had stopped, leaving the night air cool and damp. I rushed to the edge, looking for the fire escape. There wasn't one. Voices came from the stairwell behind me. Flashlight beams swept across the roof. "Mason, security, stay where you are." I backed away, moving around the roof access structure, keeping it between me and the approaching security team. My phone was in my pocket. I pulled it out, snapping pictures of the building layout, trying to capture the hidden entrance location. As I looked up from my phone, my back hit something solid, not the edge of the roof. A person. I turned slowly. Henry Jarrett stood there, thinner than his photo, clothes hanging loose on his frame. His eyes were sunken, skin pale. "You shouldn't have looked," he whispered. "Now you're part of it too." "Part of what?" I managed to ask. He smiled, the same tight smile from his ID photo. "The observation, they're watching. Always watching. From the other side." From the other side, the security team rounded the corner. 2 men in suits I didn't recognize, not the usual building security. "Mr. Mason," one said calmly, "you've entered a restricted area. We need you to come with us." Jarrett leaned close, his breath sour. "Don't let them take you below. Whatever you do." The men approached slowly, hands conspicuously empty, showing they were unarmed. "You're not in trouble," the one in front said. "We just need to debrief you." I looked between them and Jarrett, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "What's in the sublevels?" I demanded. The men stopped. They exchanged a glance. "There are no sublevels," the second man said. "Mr. Jarrett has been dealing with delusions for some time. We've been trying to help him." Jarrett laughed, a hollow sound. "Show him your ID. Tell him who you really work for." The first man sighed, reaching into his jacket. The ID he produced looked official. Department of Energy, Advanced Research Division. "We lease space in this building," he explained. "Some of our work is classified." Mr. Jarrett became fixated on our presence. He constructed an elaborate conspiracy. "Then why hide the entrance?" I asked. "Why the secret passage? Old service tunnel," the second man said. "Sealed during renovations. Jarrett found it, used it to hide when he should have been working. When he was terminated, he broke back in." It sounded reasonable, almost. "And the cameras in the tunnel? The notebook?" The men exchanged another look. The first one stepped forward. "Come downstairs with us. We'll explain everything." "Will." Jarrett grabbed my arm, fingers digging in with surprising strength. "Don't." I hesitated, looking between them. That's when I heard it. The building began to vibrate subtly, the sensation traveling up through my feet. The men's calm expressions faltered. The first one reached into his jacket again. I made my decision. I ran, not toward the stairwell, but across the roof, toward the adjacent building. The gap was wide, too wide to jump safely, but fear gave me speed. I hit the edge at a sprint and launched myself into the night air. For one terrible moment, I was suspended over nothing, the ground far below. Then I crashed onto the neighboring rooftop, rolling painfully across gravel and tar. Behind me, Jarrett stood at the edge of the Westlake roof. The men grabbed him, pulling him back. The last I saw, they were dragging him toward the stairwell. I didn't wait. I found the roof access and hurried down through the neighboring building, passing confused janitors and late-night workers. I didn't stop until I reached my car, parked 3 blocks away. I drove home in a daze, checked into a hotel under a false name, and uploaded the photos I'd taken to a cloud account. The next morning, I called in sick. The day after that, I resigned. 2 weeks later, I received a letter, formal Department of Energy letterhead, offering me a position with their security team. triple my previous salary. All I had to do was sign the enclosed, non-disclosure agreement about the regrettable misunderstanding at Westlake Plaza. I didn't sign it. Instead, I moved 2 states away and took a day job. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, I wake to the sound of an alarm beeping. And when I check my phone, there's always a new email in my cloud account, though I never gave anyone that address. The subject line is always the same, 1981, GHD. I never open them. But sometimes, when I can't sleep, I wonder what Henry Jarrett saw beneath Westlake Plaza. What made him hide in that tunnel for 5 years, watching through a hole in the wall. What he's trying to tell me now, and I wonder how long until they find me too. The doors remain sealed, but the echoes of these lockdown nightmares have undoubtedly seeped through the cracks. 7 tales of isolation, suspicion, and the terrifying realization that sometimes the greatest threat is the one sharing your confined space. Did you feel the walls closing in? The paranoia taking root? Lockdown may have lifted for many, but the psychological scars, the unsettling truths unearthed in that stillness, they linger. The final twist, perhaps, is how the mundane routines of isolation can become the breeding ground for extraordinary terror. Which story resonated most deeply with your own lockdown anxieties? Which chilling discovery made your breath catch in your throat? Unburden your thoughts, your own unsettling lockdown moments in the comments below. This is a safe space for shared dread. If these chronicles of confinement have captivated your morbid curiosity, then ensure you subscribe to Nightmare True Horror. Let your light be a beacon in the lingering darkness, guiding others who seek to understand the horrors that can unfold when the world outside stops and the world inside begins to unravel. Until the next period of unsettling quiet descends and new stories of hidden terrors emerge, stay vigilant, for even when the doors reopen, some shadows, once invited in, never truly leave.